cloud. Alrighty, welcome everyone to the October edition of the Dependency-Track community meeting. Organizational stuff first, as always, these meetings are recorded and they will be uploaded to YouTube shortly after. The slides will be published to the community repository in the Dependency-Track GitHub organization. Please use the Zoom chat to ask questions during the presentation, but there's also an open Q&A section towards the end of this meeting, so you can ask other attendees or ask maintainers all the questions you may have. Also, as always, guest presentations. We would love to host you here if you have something to share that is related to Dependency-Track, be it you just want to brag about something cool that you've built, you want to vent about something that needs improvement in the project, or you want to get like feedback on Dependency-Track related designs that you want to propose, or even you want to propose changes to the project itself. We would love to host you here. There's no control upfront what you can present. Everything goes. Just reach out to us and we will be happy to host you. As for today, the agenda, there will be an upcoming version 4.13.5 release, which I will quickly walk over. Some important notices again, continuation from last month's meeting. I will give a sneak peek into the plugin system that we've built for version 5 that is upcoming, and as promised, the Q&A towards the end. For the upcoming releases, as I mentioned, version 4.13.5 will be coming. The main fix here is a BOM validation issue that currently multiple people have reported, which has to do with unknown SPDX license IDs. The problem behind this being that we use, or that Dependency-Track, when you upload a BOM to it, it will validate it against the cyclone-dx schema. That schema itself embeds the SPDX license ID schema. And as SPDX adds new license IDs to its known list of licenses, these schemas can get out of sync, and this is what happened here. So SPDX published new IDs, SBOM generators started to use those IDs, but our validation still used an old cyclone-dx schema that referenced an old SPDX license ID schema, causing validation failures. The main offender of this has been these, I think it's pronounced SMILE GPL license, which appears to occur mostly in Linux packages. So people who use Trivy or Sift to generate BOMs for container images, for example, those would have experienced this issue. We will also fix CPE matching being case sensitive at the moment, whereas it should be case insensitive. So the CPE matching guidelines specifically say the matching should be case insensitive. We're going to fix this in this release. There's also a medium severity vulnerability that has been responsibly disclosed and fixed by someone from the community. We will disclose details for this when we release this version. We will also make the authentication for the owasp index analyzer required. We went over this in the last community meeting, but I will also say a few words on the next few slides about why we're doing this. We are aiming for a release this week, at the latest on Monday. We will try this week by Friday, but again, maybe it's going to be Monday. We will see. Important notices. Again, we mentioned this last community meeting, but because it's so important, I will just reiterate. The NVD has discontinued the 1.0 data feeds. So if you mirror the NVD via the feed files, which is the default if you boot up Dependency-Track for the first time, and you're still on a version lower than 4.13.4, please, for the love of God, upgrade to something newer, upgrade to 4.13.4 or 4.13.5 when it is released. Or you can switch to the API-based mirroring in the meantime. If you do not do any of these things, you will not get CVE updates anymore. The data feeds from the NVD are no longer available. There's no way to consume this data otherwise. As a reminder, you can go into the settings, go to vulnerability sources, national vulnerability database, and there you can enable mirroring via API. If you are, for whatever reason, not able to upgrade to the latest Dependency-Track version, this is how you can circumvent the issue in the meantime. Also, again, owasp index has started to require authentication. That was previously not the case for many, many years. They recently switched it on. During last during the last community meeting, I mentioned this is going to happen. They didn't provide a date as to when they are doing the switch. It turned out they have switched this on, I think, over the last weekend. So you will need to authenticate with OSIS index now. So if you use OSIS index for vulnerability analysis, which is the default again, and you have not configured credentials in the settings, please do this as soon as possible, because otherwise you won't get results from this analyzer, of course. As I mentioned, it has been impossible to use unauthenticated access since like roughly last weekend. Yeah, please provide credentials for OSIS index if you want to use that service. Then a little sneak peek for the version 5 plugin system that we have built more or less by accident, I have to admit. This is something we're currently, it is very present in what we are currently doing on the version 5 front. So I thought it might be helpful for people to get updated on this. So first, why are we building this? Why have we built this? It's mostly just a byproduct of our internal needs, driven mainly by many cases of certain features, in this case, feature X, being backed by n possible implementations and just being an arbitrary number. We have the expectation that n will grow over time. So more and more implementations will be added over time. These integrations are mostly with third-party services or other integrations that we are not necessarily interested in dealing with in the core product. Let's put it that way. And the implementations all need to be kind of configurable by users. And the implementations that we currently have are very reliant on internals of the Dependency-Track platform, which makes them hard to extract and modularize. There's also this repetitive pattern of lifecycle management that we had to go through, or resource management, and we just needed something that covers most of the cases for us. But also, we need to modularize our code base more aggressively because it keeps on growing. There are things like build parallelization and just general maintenance concerns that we cannot get if we have like one big module that contains everything. And having a plugin system helps us with this. There's also the intent of enabling the community to implement their own custom integrations that they don't necessarily want to upstream or contribute to the core project. Could also be commercial integrations if you are a vendor of some analysis service. Maybe you just do not want to open source it. That could also be. And the system is kind of heavily inspired by what other extensible systems have built or used historically, mainly Keycloak and Trino, which are good examples of systems like this. Conceptually, how it works, how it will work is Dependency-Track, the platform, defines extension points. An extension point can be implemented by 0 or more extensions. The extension lifecycle is managed by extension factories. I can already tell some people might be rolling their eyes when they see factories, but give it a let's wait how this develops. And a plugin is a collection of extension factories. The plugin is the entry point to this entire system, if you will. Plugins can be built in, which we ship per default with the project, or they can be external, which in this case would mean jar files that you put into a directory. Or if we end up building another like plugin acquisition mechanism that downloads from an app store or whatever, that is all theoretically possible. When it comes to the lifecycle, plugins are discovered on application startup. Extension factories are created and initialized once, and extensions are created ad hoc whenever they are needed. Both extension factories and extensions release resources after use, which could be connections to like HTTP connections or temporary files, caches, whatever have you. There are some intentional limitations that we put in place, if you will. First off, Dependency-Track still controls when an extension is invoked or when an extension point is invoked, and extensions will not get full platform access. It is not the intention that people can just deploy arbitrary code into the system and do whatever they want. There are guidelines in place and or guardrails rather to fulfill a specific purpose. Specifically, this means extensions cannot interact directly with the database. They cannot register REST API endpoints. They cannot see other plugins or extensions at the moment. And they cannot see code from the main code base. As I said, this is not meant to make everything extensible. It is not meant for people to plug in their own database implementation, for example. That is not the intention. Again, only specific aspects of the platform that we, as maintainers of the project, think benefit from this mechanism will use it. When it comes to configuration that I mentioned before, there's a differentiation between deployment and runtime configuration. Deployment configuration being static and cannot change at runtime. Examples being system properties, environment variables, things that you define once on application startup and that never change again as long as the application runs. There are runtime configurations, which are dynamic and change at runtime. In the case of Dependency-Track, those configurations live in the database and are modifiable via UI by users or via REST API by automated scripts, if you will. Extensions themselves will decide where to retrieve which configuration from. So you can decide, do I load certain configuration on startup? Do I load it at runtime dynamically when I need it? Or do I use a mixture of both? That is up to the extension author then. Extensions can only access their own configuration. That is ensured via namespacing. And configuration, or we take the definitions of runtime configurations and render a UI based on those definitions to make it accessible to users in the administration UI. Quick example how this could look like. So this is the definition of multiple configurations, multiple runtime configurations. Obviously, you don't have to read it all here, but the main points being for developers of extensions, which also includes us as maintainers, obviously. Configurations are properly typed, so they're not just strings that you have to deal with. They are type checked, if you will, when they are updated. And you can also have secret configurations that are transparently encrypted, not displayed in the UI, not retrievable via REST API, but updatable with proper values. How this looks like when rendered, this is like a little bit rough around the edges still, but you can see all the configurations defined here being rendered in this case. Particularly pay attention to the secrets being rendered as proper password fields. The value you see, or the value that is hidden behind these, this masking is not the encrypted value, it's just a placeholder. And also for stuff like timestamps, we just render a date picker, like stuff like this, which is easy to achieve. If it is a password, we hide it, or we use the password hints of the HTML standard. If it is a URL, we also use certain properties in the HTML form that we generate, so it won't even let you input strings that are not URLs. We also do like validation when you submit this based on the definitions you provided. We check the types, obviously, and give proper feedback, so you see errors or warnings or validation failures in this form when you submit it. And this obviously is like reusable, which is great for us as we extend it, and the community obviously adds more extensions. At the moment, we have 2 extension points already, for both of which you can find ADRs, so architecture decision records, why we added them and what they actually include. The first one is file storage, which is used for persisting files between asynchronous processing steps. One example could be you upload a BOM, which obviously includes a file. Dependency-Track validates that file, but then the processing is asynchronous. We don't do it synchronously with your request. So to store the BOM file that you uploaded between receiving it, validating it, and actually processing it, we use this extension. And currently implemented is memory, local file system, and S3. Depending on how you deploy your Dependency-Track cluster, you get to choose whatever fits you best here. And recently what we added is vulnerability data sources, which currently includes MVD, GitHub, and OSV. Why we did the last one, just to take a step back here, this is one of the very first architecture diagrams that we, or architecture drafts that we published for the version 5. You can see that we chose to use Kafka as kind of a backbone to communicate between services, and we split the API server into multiple services. But we obviously decided, as per recent community meetings, to get rid of this specific aspect of the architecture. There will be no more Kafka requirement, which led us to needing new ways to integrate all these external data sources. And one of them being on the very left. So there is this mirror service that was intended to consume vulnerability intelligence data from multiple sources, being NVD, GitHub, OSV, converting it to CycloneDX into the CycloneDX format. There's a bill of vulnerabilities capability in the CycloneDX standard. Pushing it to Kafka and then having the API server consume at its own pace as new data comes in. Now that Kafka is gone, we replaced it with an extension point. And that extension point, again, don't read too much of the specific code here. But the extension point basically provides the same mechanism or the same benefit that we got previously, which is pull-based. So the API server basically requests more data as it processes, or how do I say it? It is pull-based, so the API server can process data in its own pace. The implementation of vulnerability data sources is basically an iterator in Java. So you first ask, do you have more items? If yes, give me the next item, and so on and so forth. And implementations of this are intended to only fetch new data as it is requested, so lazily loaded. Obviously, that can differ between implementations, but for what we have already built for NVD, GitHub, and OSV, it has worked quite well. We also added a mechanism to avoid redundant processing across invocations. So as you consume this possibly endless stream of BOVs, of bill of vulnerabilities, you can let the data source know which BOV you already processed, and it can then track or keep track of a watermark, so to speak. So it can track the latest modified timestamp of vulnerabilities that you processed. So when you invoke the data source the next time, it can just skip all of the ones it already processed. How this looks like when you use it, at runtime, you just invoke the plugin manager, request all the factories for a specific extension point, for a specific extension point, in this case, the vuln data source. You iterate over all the extension factories, create new instances of the extension, and then just process the data as needed. So again, this is a very simple use case of an iterator. Request, do you have more items? If yes, give me that item, process it, mark it as processed, move on to the next source. For the upcoming extension points, there will be extension points for the notification publishers, which obviously can have multiple implementations, being webhook, Microsoft Teams, Slack, Mattermost, whatever have you. Vulnerability analyzers, OSIS index, Trivy, Sneak, custom ones, if you will. Data sharing, so we already support uploading of data to Defect Dojo, for example. If there are alternative systems that you want data from Dependency-Track to end up in, this could be an extension point to use. And then obviously BOM formats. At the moment, we only support CycloneDX imports, but SPDX, SIFT, etc. could also be implemented using this mechanism. As for to-dos, what still needs to be done? Loading of external plugins with class loader isolation. At the moment, this is not yet implemented. We also need a mechanism still for internationalization of configuration in the UI. You might have seen in the screenshot at a few slides back that some things were very technically named still, and that is because the internationalization bit is still missing. We also need to publish the plugin API to Maven Central, obviously, to make it usable by the community. And there will be a plugin authoring guide to help you with implementing plugins. Big caveat being, making it work for our internal use cases has a priority for us. So we will only work on making it public and publicly accessible once it works for us. And opening it for external plugins is planned, but it is currently on the back burner, which pretty much also fits into the first item here. That was a very quick and broad rundown. if there's interest, we can definitely talk or give a more detailed presentation as to how this works. I'm more interested if this is too technical and if people are more interested in the bigger picture of how you use dependency track, or if these technical topics are also of interest. I'm curious what people think. Yeah, but that's it. Now for the Q&A section. If there are any questions, now is your time, your chance to have them.
The SBOM BOV format.
Yes.
Okay. For exchanging vulnerability information. I take it that's the equivalent, or sorry, so the Cyclone equivalent of OSV format type thing.
Yeah.
Any reason to create to take the BOV format over the OSV format?
So the original reason was, I think, that OSV does not support CPE.
Okay, is that a legacy question, or is it just a?
Yeah, that is a legacy question, if you will. So we still need to support CPE just because the NVD provides it, and CPE also applies to hardware and operating systems. OSV is very Perl based, and I think they also support hashes, but there's no direct CPE support.
Okay, and that can't be done as an extension point in OSV then?
That is something we could look into. Personally, I'm not married to using the BOV format.
Yeah, I'm just worried about a proliferation of formats, which we've gone down those wars before.
Yeah.
And trying to avoid, OSV format is okay, it's great, it's fine, it does what it does on the tin. BOV might be fine. Be interesting to see if actually are they needed?
Yeah. In the end, we just need one format that can adapt to everything we need to ingest, right?
Yeah,
whatever can do it, fine.
but it's putting something, and this is not for this this forum, is corner cases as main points in it is just building in legacy. If it's an extension point for a corner case, then that should be an extension point for a corner case that's handled separately. But that's my gut feeling. Okay. Thank you. And the other observation is about internationalization, as you said. I think we'd had discussions about this before about naming the actual tagging within the within the actual configuration as those points. So you wouldn't necessarily give it a friendly name. It'd be a properties file name or something like that. But that's fine. Okay.
I'm interested in stealing your time ad hoc if you're open to it, because I think you have experience in building systems like this, correct?
Who, me?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm ready to listen to some rants. Let's put it this way.
No, it's not. It's not a rant. It's just a case of normally you put into configuration a namespaced tag. Okay, you never give the structural language at all of what it should be displayed at. That should be the responsibility of a properties file that is then can be rendered based on the language, and it should be a separate deliverable. Okay, it does one thing. If you want to see it in a particular language, that's fine. Then just provide a properties file for that as well, and that's exactly what it should be. But the underlying code shouldn't have anything about the structured English or the configuration of it. We can go through probably what I've done previously. I think I did show you some examples of that, but let's go. It'd be interesting how Keycloak does it and how the other ones do it now. Because I think previously I'd stolen that idea off them donkeys years ago when it wasn't Keycloak, when it was called something else. I can't remember what it was called. Even Vinod might remember because he worked on the Keycloak stuff as well. I'll try and dig some of that.
Silence, definitely silence. Okay, no, but that's helpful. I will definitely bother you again about this. Any other questions? 3, 2.
It was just about time for the OSS to add authentication. It was just about time.
In what
so
sense?
now we need to, yeah, the OSS index.
Mhm.
I was.
Are you going to update the plugin to mandatory require credentials? Then it'll stop everybody. It'll start barfing at them if they upgrade.
Yeah, time to bump.
Alrighty. 3, 2, 1. Sold. No more questions. Thanks everyone for joining. See you next month.
Cheers, Nicholas. Bye-bye.
See you then. Bye.